Now that the canvases are attached, it's time to go ahead and make the sketches we need to create our sculpted body. So I'm going to start with a sketch, and do a spline. I'm going to start by picking that center work plane. And I want to do a sketch that follows the middle of the chair. So this piece that comes around out to the back and then up. Start at the bottom. It's a good idea to hover over the middle, move my mouse to the left, and you'll notice it snaps to that middle. So trace along this line. This is the back of the chair. Comes up through the middle, then the seat. Try to envision in your mind the center of the chair and what that section looks like. Alright, click the green checkbox for that to be done. You can make some adjustments to these. And say OK. Now by orbiting around, you can look and see that center of the chair. Next up is this front portion of the chair, the very front outer edge. So sketch, spline. Again, hover over the very center, move to the right so it stays snapped, and trace this guy up and around. With the spline tool. The top, green checkbox to call it good. Click on the house to look at this. Now the front edge does not occur in the middle, it occurs over to each side. So to know that distance, I take the chair width, 509. 509, divide that by 2. So that side occurs 254.5 inches to the left. I can select this line, I can right click, and I can say move. I can move it to the left 254.5 millimeters and say OK. And that's pretty slick. In Fusion 360, it's always essentially in 3D sketching mode, so you can move things off of plane pretty quickly. Now I'm going to connect these two sketches. I'm going to do so by moving again. So I'm going to click the top portion up here, this line, the top vertex, right click and say move, or repeat move. In the move command there's a cool tool here. I can move from point to point. So I'm going to do that. Click point to point. I'm going to say this point here rests on this point here. And you notice that's going to drag that over. Now I can look at the front side here and potentially adjust some of this down. Click this point and I can right click. I can say repeat move. Click on this point. Drag these to better match the sketches. It's looking pretty good. If I move it off like I did here, I want to do point to point again. Don't need to set a tangential constraint, but I do want to try to look at these curves and have them come to a tangential arc. Last but not least, do point to point. If I get these off, I want to Click point to point, connect these. Great. So now I've got the left side and the center of the chair. Now I want to draw some of the other splines that connect all of these curves together. So I've got the base of the chair, the front of the seat, the back of the seat are some good curves to add in. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up my move by saying OK. Now this time I'm going to simply add a spline. Now there are other ways to do this. You can draw these on separate work planes and do separate sketches. But I'm doing this all in one sketch. It's just the way I'm doing it right now, but there are different ways to do it. I'm going to go ahead. It's going to seem a little bit silly at first. I'm still locked into this middle work plane. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click 3 points. It doesn't really matter where, as long as I'm not clicking on any of the other lines. If I click starting with another line, it considers it a continuation of the line, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep these as separate profiles. So I can use that move command, move. I can do some, click on the start point. I can do point to point, so from this point to that point, that's the start of this. Say OK, and I can right click and say move again. Select the beginning point, and I can point to point. This point goes to here. Great. Now this original vertex is still in that original work plane, so I can select it and I can say move, and I can pull that over. I can look at the top view and get that curve to match the way it needs to go. Alright, so right in there. And I also want to set that guy on the ground. So there it is. Say OK. So there's that back curve coming in. Now I want to do the curve up at the top here to connect these two portions. Follow the same procedure. Sketch, spline. Again, I'm stuck on this work plane in the middle. That's fine. I'm just going to click in 3 places. Click off the side 1, 2, 3. Green checkbox. Now I can right click and I can say move. Click this first point, point to point, point A, and click a point on the first spline. Say OK. Repeat the move command. Change it to point to point. Try to get a similar point on the other side up here. Great. Now I can right click and I can move this last part into place. This vertex here. Look at this from the top view first. Bring that in. I want to get a bit of a tangent coming in here. So look at that, try to line that up as best I can. Now from the front view, same thing again, look at this, try to make a tangent coming in. And I'm following essentially this seat curve. Alright, so there's the front connection. I'm going to do one between this point and this point across the back. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch spline. This is our last spline. Spline. Stuck on that middle plane still, so I click on 3 points, 1, 2, 3. Green checkbox. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say move. This point, I'll do point to point. Right there. Okay, right click and I'll move again. This point, point to point. Left side over here. Okay, right click and repeat move. This guy. I'll click on the top view first. Move it off that plane and into place. Now I don't want to do anything like this. I want to try to keep it a bit tangent. Imagining the rest of the chair there. And the front view, same thing. Bring it in tangent, and again following the curvature of that seat. And like that. Now I've got the sketch. I've got the center spline, I've got the left spline, and I've got 1, 2, 3 connections. Go ahead and say OK, and that completes our sketch, so we can click Stop Sketch, and it's a good time to save.